$1,247. That's what's in your account. Not savings, just your balance. You check it at 11:43 p.m., lying on a mattress you picked up used from someone online. You refresh it again at 11:44. Same number. No change. You're carrying $31,000 in student debt for $1,200 on a credit card, and your next paycheck is already spoken for before it even arrives. You're 23. You tell yourself you're not behind. You repeat it often. But every trip to the store turns into a calculation. You reach for the olive oil, then put it back. You choose the cheaper option. You're still sharing a streaming account with someone you barely talk to anymore, because canceling it feels like losing something. This is what being at zero feels like. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a constant background noise of numbers running through your head. No one talks openly about money here, but everyone is quietly doing the same math. You check your banking app more than your messages. You memorize your account details. You move $200 into savings, then move it back a few days later. At this stage, money isn't a tool, it's survival. Either you have enough to breathe, or you don't, and sometimes it's hard to tell which. The first rule: at zero, your relationship with money is emotional, and emotional decisions tend to stack against you. Then you get a raise. Not huge, $6,000 a year before taxes. It shows up as an extra $387 a month. For a few hours, you feel like things have changed. Then your car needs $900 worth of work. That's when you realize expenses grow to fill whatever room you create. You manage to pay off a small credit card, $1, $200. You take a screenshot of the zero balance. You don't send it to anyone. No one would fully understand why it matters. But it does. Because for the first time, a number moved in your favor because of something you did. That's where it begins. You hit $10,000 in savings for the first time at 26. You've never seen 5 digits in your account before. Not once. You check it constantly that first week, not out of fear but disbelief. You don't spend it. You just let it sit. The emotional impact of that number is far bigger than the number itself. It feels like you've stepped into a different version of yourself. You haven't, not really, but it feels that way. You start learning. Not motivation, not surface-level advice, real knowledge about how money works. You discover index funds. You open an investment account and stare at it for weeks before making a move. Eventually, you invest $1,500. The market dips almost immediately. You think about pulling it out. You don't. That's a turning point. It's where you decide whether fear controls your actions or not. Then something shifts. You stop seeing money only as protection and start seeing it as data. You're earning $68,000 a year. You've built up $40,000 in savings. You're contributing to retirement accounts. On paper, you're stable. You're doing everything you were told: saving, investing, avoiding unnecessary upgrades in lifestyle. You're doing it right. Then one night, you sit down and actually project it all forward. You build out the numbers honestly. You look at what decades of disciplined saving at your current income will lead to. And something changes. The result isn't bad. It's solid. It's secure. But it's not what you imagined for yourself. This is the plateau. You've mastered stability, but you haven't learned how to build yet. The second rule: a salary looks like a foundation, but it's actually a limit. Once you see it clearly, you can't ignore it. You start something on the side. You don't even call it business. It's just something you work on during weekends. It makes $400 a month at first, then $900, then $1,700. You keep it quiet. You don't mention it at work. You don't share it with most people. Every dollar goes back into growing it for over a year. You keep your lifestyle the same. Same meals, same routines, no upgrades. Your net worth climbs, $80,000, then $110,000. You begin to see the difference between where you are and where your salary alone would have taken you. That difference, that space, is where leverage exists. Your investments generate $3,800 in a year without your direct effort. There are months when your side income outpaces your job. And for the first time, you truly understand what an asset is, not in theory, but in practice. Something tangible, something you built or acquired that produces income even when you're not actively working. That's when your relationship with time begins to shift. You start valuing hours differently. Any hour spent on something that doesn't grow over time feels like a missed opportunity, like the system you've built is sitting idle. You reach $150,000 in net worth at 32. You own a rental with $44,000 in equity, your investment account sits at $61,000, and your business brings in about $6,200 each month. Your lifestyle hasn't changed much. You're still driving the same car. You don't talk about any of it. You've learned that conversations about money at this level tend to make people uncomfortable. Some respond with quiet envy, others with dismissal. Neither adds value. You start declining things that once felt automatic. A destination wedding that would require you to sell something just to attend. A group trip where splitting evenly really means covering for others. A business idea pitched by a friend who doesn't understand how money actually flows. You say no, repeatedly. You feel the tension it creates, but you don't explain yourself, you just hold your position. That's another shift. You stop using money to maintain connections and start protecting it to create opportunities. At $300,000, your capital starts to feel almost alive. It has direction. It responds differently depending on where you place it. You've had one investment generate $22,000 in less than a year. Another one dropped $9,400. You don't react emotionally to the loss. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you understand now that losses are part of participation. You don't retreat. You adjust. People at earlier stages often assume success is about avoiding risk. It isn't. It's about selecting which risks are worth carrying. The third rule: below $500,000, you're actively acquiring assets. Above that point, those assets begin to create more assets on their own. You're getting close, and you can feel it before you see it. $670,000, then $810,000. You restructure your business more than once, bring in a partner, exit one position, and reinvest into something larger. You're 36. Your net worth reaches $920,000. Your sleep changes, not from worry, but from intensity. Your mind is constantly processing. Ideas come in the shower. Emails get sent before sunrise. You turn down a job offering $210,000 a year. Your parents don't fully understand. You don't try to explain everything. You just say it didn't feel aligned. That's only part of the truth. It happens. A regular Tuesday. No build-up. No ceremony. You refresh your account, and the number crosses 7 figures. You pause for a moment. You expected a shift, something noticeable. Instead, there's a quiet acknowledgement, and then almost immediately clarity. $1 million at a 4% return is $40,000 a year. That's not freedom. That's a foundation. The real shift isn't disappointment. It's realization. Happiness was never the target, and you're only now being honest about that. The millionaire moment isn't the finish line. It's validation that the system works. You stop attending events you once relied on to feel connected. Meetups, seminars, networking gatherings where everyone talks about what they're building but avoid discussing the cost behind it. You don't reject them. You just no longer need them. You're operating in a different space now. Conversations happen in smaller settings, with fewer people, and without labels or introductions. At $2.3 million, money stops being a source of stress entirely. For the first time, it becomes what it was always meant to be, a resource. Like time, like attention, you stop checking your account balance constantly. Instead, you think in terms of allocation. Where's your capital placed? What is it producing? What's being overlooked? You hire someone to manage your wealth, then let them go when you realize you understand your own situation better. Eventually, you find someone more experienced, someone who speaks less, charges more, and operates at a level you respect. Your business generates $4.1 million in revenue. You own 2 properties with a combined equity of $380,000. Your portfolio grows to $1.6 million. You're not rich in the way people casually describe it. You're something else. You're in a position where time, real, usable time, belongs to you. You take a 3-week break. For 5 of those days, you don't check your email at all. That's the part most people can't buy at earlier stages. Not the travel, the disconnection. The fourth rule: wealth isn't defined by what you collect. It's defined by what you're no longer required to do. At $5 million, the nature of the game shifts. It's no longer about building. It's about placement. You're directing capital now, not trading time for it. The difference sounds subtle, but it changes everything. You're involved in one deal projected to return $800,000 within a year and a half. Another may yield nothing. You understand both outcomes, and you participate in both anyway, because together they balance each other. The relationship between them is the strategy. This kind of thinking wouldn't have made sense to you a few years ago. You begin spending time with people operating at $20 million, $50 million. You observe them closely, not what they own, but how they think. Their pace is different. Their patience stretches longer. They aren't focused on winning every move. They're focused on staying in the game longer than anyone else. You become more selective with conversations about money, not out of ego, but because accuracy matters. At this level, discussions can easily become distorted. People attach emotions and assumptions to numbers that don't carry those meanings. Here, $500,000 can simply be a position size, not a life-altering figure. Saying that in the wrong setting creates misunderstanding, so you choose silence instead. At $14 million, you find yourself in rooms you once only imagined. Not celebrity spaces, but decision-making environments. Meetings with a family office managing hundreds of millions, exploring partnerships. Conversations with private equity groups searching for operators to join larger acquisitions. You're there not as a guest, but as a contributor, because your capital and your judgment both carry weight. That's a different kind of influence. The fifth rule: beyond $10 million, your reputation becomes an asset in itself. It generates opportunities independently of your direct effort. Then you face decisions that would have felt morally complex years earlier. A company you're invested in restructures. Jobs are lost. You know the leadership personally. You don't intervene. You review the numbers. You hold your position. The company becomes more efficient. Your stake increases in value. You don't celebrate it. You don't dwell on it either. What you notice is the distance, the widening space between your decisions and their real-world effects. And that distance grows quietly. By the time your net worth reaches $30 million, you're in your mid-50s. Systems are in place that extend beyond your lifetime. Trust structures protect assets. A foundation distributes hundreds of thousands annually, partly for impact, partly for access. You understand both sides of that reality and don't pretend otherwise. You stop pretending about most things. It takes energy, and energy is the one resource that doesn't multiply. At this level, the shift is clear. The system no longer depends on your constant involvement. It depends on how you've positioned it. You could step away for months, and it would continue operating. That was always the purpose, to build something that runs without you. Capital moves without your daily input. Decisions are executed by people you've empowered with frameworks you spent years developing. You hold stakes across multiple companies. You have direct access to individuals who shape outcomes at a high level. Not just public figures, but those who influence direction behind the scenes. You don't see yourself as lobbying. You see it as advising. The distinction matters to you. At $80 million, the challenge isn't loneliness, it's separation of context. The people in your life exist at a different distance from the world you now operate in. Your closest relationships tend to form with those who function at a similar level. Not intentionally, but naturally, because the conversations align. The things that occupy your mind, capital structures, regulatory strategy, long-term wealth planning, don't easily translate. You're not a different person, but your environment has become something most people from your past can't fully interpret anymore. You give more than you ever have, not for recognition, not even for access, though you understand those dynamics exist. You give because at this level, money no longer defines anything essential about you. It stops being a scorecard, and giving becomes one of the few actions that still feels intentional, something that carries weight beyond numbers. The sixth rule: beyond $50 million, money stops reflecting your value. It starts reflecting your influence. You're 61. Your net worth is $94 million. Only a handful of people know the exact number. You haven't worked a traditional job in nearly a decade, but you haven't stopped working either. The way you think has changed. You no longer think in months or years. You think in cycles, demographic shifts, infrastructure waves, credit expansions, and contractions. You position yourself ahead of them, the way someone reads weather patterns before a storm arrives. You're not always right. But being wrong here doesn't disrupt your life. It simply means an allocation performs below expectation, and you adjust. You sit in a boardroom. 5 people. Enough combined capital in that room to influence entire regions. You speak briefly. You ask a couple of questions. The direction of the conversation shifts because of them. You leave before the meeting is over. That's what influence looks like at this level. Quiet, precise, without display. The room adjusts to your presence. And somewhere else, in the same city, there's someone at the very beginning. A 24-year-old checking his account balance. $1, $2.47. Standing in a grocery line, calculating what he can afford. He puts back the premium option and reaches for the cheaper one. He thinks this is about money. He believes that earning more will solve everything. He doesn't yet understand what actually has to change, or what it will cost, not financially, but personally. The distance. The version of himself he'll have to leave behind to become someone else. This system doesn't pause to ask if you're ready. It doesn't question whether the trade is worth it. It resets every day and responds only to who shows up. And the ones who keep showing up consistently, patiently, without hesitation, without constantly second-guessing, those are the ones who compound. Not just financially, but in every area. Growth builds on itself. So does everything else. The number is $1,247. That's where it begins. It always begins there.